Hey guys, it's Lewis, it's Lutu, and today I'm coming at you with a second channel video talking about Pokemon content creation. Now, I want to preface this with a few things. So this is stuff that I've all tweeted about. I don't think this is new information, and with Twitter being my biggest platform, I felt the need to kind of not condense those opinions into 280 character tweets. Also, this video is hardly structured as much as I would like it to be, especially when compared to my main content. So, if you're here randomly or if you don't know who I am, go to my main content for anything remotely high quality. Trust me, I'm not in the business of rambling. But if you do want to just put this on in the background as like a podcast, because there are going to be no visuals, don't worry. You're not going to be missing anything. Also, I'm not going to mention any specific creator in a negative light. I think that a lot of the issues that I have with Pokemon content creation as a community doesn't necessarily come from individual people. I think it's mainly a case of trends and how we can affect each other without kind of realizing it. And there are a few kind of things to sum that up with. It's so I feel like I'm walking on eggshells because I'm like, who megalol, like, who the fuck am I, right? But yeah, I'm Lewis Lutu. I am a content creator that has been doing this for about 7 years, and on my most recent channel, I've had a few blow up videos so far, and I only seem to continue to be growing, and I think the support for that has been incredible. But it's also kind of opened my eyes up to a lot of things that I've well, not really opened my eyes up. So again, as I said, I've been in this community for a while and I've seen things go down constantly. I've been through these cycles, as somebody who's on the kind of the edge of it. But now that I guess, like, after a long time, I'm finally putting the effort and I'm finally getting good enough to have my platform kind of grow. I feel like this is something that I want to talk about in an effort for other content creators, primarily to watch and maybe reflect upon. I'm not saying that anybody needs to necessarily change. I'm a pretty mellow guy when it comes to this sort of thing. And again, this isn't targeted at anyone else. Also, sorry if I sound nasally. I haven't drank anything all day, and actually, I'm going to do that right now. Hold on. Okay, I should be back. Yeah. So I forgot what I was saying. Anyway, I'm not going to mention particular content creators because, again, I don't think any one sole person is the problem. And also, I don't want to start drama or beef with anyone because ultimately, that's part of what I'm going to address, really. Hold on, I'm going to write this down in my notes. This is so scuffed. So there's that. I just have like a list of bullet points here. Again, this isn't very structured, so I really apologize. But again, podcast format. So who or what have I like observed? So I've been creating content for 7 years, 7.5 years. Pokemon content. Oh god, my throat. Holy shit, I'm so dude, what the fuck is with me today? Okay, so anyway, if I sound like shit, then fuck it. So I think to understand why Pokemon content isn't well, I'm not particularly happy with it personally at the moment. And I think that there are a lot of ways that we can change that. I think that we have to look back at what Pokemon content was. Hold on. So we have to back at like Pokemon content kind of throughout the ages, and I like to separate this into eras. And for me, the first one was almost like the Bronze Age. It was like 2007 to like late '09, and this is like when YouTube had just first started. Like Emerald and Diamond and Pearl had just came out. Almost everything was on a camcorder. Like there are some super old school names that I could bring up. It's just weird because this was an era where people were very free to create content without feeling tied down, and I think that this is really a problem that only started to come up a few years later. But I'll get to that, and I do intend to speak on all of the stuff in retrospect at some point. So, what was the scene like? There was, Wi-Fi battles like were barely established, but like a few people still exist. Obviously, I'm not mentioning content creators in a negative light, but I will mention, people throughout, I guess, like this history portion. But you had like Shofu, Pimp Knight, and people would just commentate over like sped up Wi-Fi battles, and like solo runs were a big thing. ROM hacks existed, but they weren't nearly as documented as they were now. Um, and same with shiny hunting, like speed up and complex editing and graphics. Um, you know, those like that metagame didn't exist yet. And and also like I think John was the only news channel. Giancarlo, like, and it stayed like that for many, many years. Like rumors and leaks were kind of in their weird infancy at this point. And again, this period is really interesting because nobody felt pigeonholed. It genuinely felt like people were just creating Pokemon content for the sake of creating Pokemon content, and that's rad. Then we got to like kind of the second generation of creators, which is almost like the Silver Age, right? And that's like late 2009 to 2012. And again, this is all very important, and it feels like a build up to what came after. This is like the intermediary like period with like Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and Gen 5. So, Smogon and VGC were getting traction. There was like the move from Shoddy Battle to like Pokemon Online to fully Pokemon Showdown, and a bunch of content creators inevitably kind of spawned from there. Wi-Fi battles were like the most dominant thing. Pokemosh Pit, if anyone remembers that, holy shit. That shit needs to come back, by the way. I was thinking about something like that. Nobody yoink my idea, which is also something that we'll get to later. But, oh wait, shit, I need to write something down. Okay. So yeah, I think Tama, Hayden, Shofu, Tyranitar Tube, like, those are kind of the bigger creators here. Jaywitz, easily the biggest creators at that point. And, more refined content started to come out, like scripted, edited stuff. The move away from like post commentary for Let's Plays was a big deal. And people started to commentate Wi-Fi stuff, and most people started to move on to emulators instead of camcorders. And I think that was like the big building up point for what was the golden age. And I think this is where a lot of the problems don't appear initially, but they kind of start to crop up. So this is why I got obviously I was there to kind of spectate that Pokemon content as it was coming out. But Gen 3, the third generation of this content, which is to me like the golden age of Pokemon content. And I think that if you were around during this time, you would probably agree. So this would have been like 2013 to like early 2015. And this was when X and Y and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire came out. Came out? Holy shit. Came out. It's also late here. Holy shit, why am I doing this? So the big thing, so again, just to like reflect on content. Sorry, I need to blow my nose. Holy shit. So Wi-Fi battles weren't slowed down, or Wi-Fi battles weren't sped up. It was often like live commentary, which is a really interesting change. The era of collaborations and like a collab meta, we have never seen this since. I genuinely think that we will never ever reach this period because it was such a free-for-all back then. Anybody could work with anybody. And as somebody who did start creating Pokemon content during this era, I can absolutely attest to that. It was small enough to the point where, like, it didn't feel like a business. And don't worry, I think making money off your content is great, as I, have learned throughout the years. But it's weird because it still felt like kind of wholesome. Like the community, we hadn't really gone through anything yet as a group. And I think it's really kind of fascinating to see this period that like still felt the same as previous years, but it was just a lot more juiced. There was a lot more shit going on, and it was awesome. But yeah, there was like a lot of collabs. Oh god, I remember 3DS capture cards were like fucking crack cocaine. Like, holy shit. And they still are, but to a lesser extent. Challenges and like Nuzlocke kind of finally hit the mainstream for content creation, and that is, again, I feel like this generation was where it like was all set up to crash and burn. But I get to that in a second. So many like a few older content creators kind of stepped down. I haven't really mentioned them too much, but like a ton of newer creators kind of supplanted them, and it's impossible to count how many new people came with the X and Y era. I think Lumio Station, for anyone that remembers, that kind of era was insane. It was when all of the content creators were starting to meet up at conventions, and it really felt like we had a community kind of building. And back before then, we really had kind of like separated communities on like internet forums, right? Like you would have the Super Skarmory forum, or you would have Maryland, and people would just kind of congregate on there. But now that there are so many creators, Twitter kind of encapsulated all of the discussion, and Skype groups were just made every single day, and there was a lot of like fan interaction in a way that we've never really seen before. And again, all of this stuff seems great, but it naturally turned out into kind of a negative. So yeah, and oh god, this is the time when everybody had a fucking PokeTuber mascot. I think in hindsight, a lot of people agree that it was kind of fucking cringe. And it's where like you had so many people with like 100 subs that commissioned like hundreds of dollars worth of art of their fucking like trainer like designed as themselves. But like clearly like drawn, to a very good degree, if that's one way to word it, compared to like how they looked. I don't know. It was but it was weird, right? Like it seems goofy looking back. When everybody just had like adjective Pokemon as their YouTube name. But it was fun. And I think that no matter who you were in the community, it was like a really like welcoming place. And I look back on this era with a lot of fondness. Again, I wasn't at the tippy top, but I still do remember collaborating and having so much fun during that era. And it became a lot more kind of loud and personality driven, and I think Twitter is definitely to blame for that. And obviously, the internet in 2014 is a very different place to how it was or how it is now. And I think it has gotten better. Looking back at some very old screenshots that I'm pretty sure I have saved, but that's neither here nor there. And I think it's maybe aside from that kind of part, I feel like us growing as a community since then is really fantastic. Oh my god, this is also the period where like VGC and Smogon were like on the same level. So that was great. Like layouts and graphic design and presentation it's not necessarily like the best it's ever been, but it was at the forefront. Like people were spending fortunes on like very particular graphic designers to get like this like themed edge to their content, to be part of like the upper class of like content creators. And it was really again, that to me is cool in that context. But as time goes on, we'll see that that's not necessarily a great thing. So shiny hunting was starting to get bigger, but it still wasn't shiny hunting as a community has always been pretty big, but in terms of the content creation side, it still had yet to hit its big boom. And one thing that I do remember was speed up and emulation kind of turned into like this, just like a hotkey on your emulator. Whereas like post editing and all that kind of shit kind of fell by the wayside. We had like grinding montages, which why would anybody want to watch that? Like looking back, I did it, everyone did it. It's kind of funny to think about. But yeah, this felt really good. But it all set up to kind of like crash and burn for the next kind of generation, which is like the dark age of Pokemon content creation. And I think this is because of a few major factors. So late 2015 to like early 2018, so like the Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon era. First of all, 2015 didn't have a game, and naturally that kind of forced the trend of creators playing the same games over and over and over again under different stipulations. And I think that's why a lot of creators tapped out of Pokemon. I think it's where a lot of people stopped watching. And it's why you'll have these big channels with hundreds of thousands of subs not hit nearly as many views. And that's not really their fault. It's just, the audience has kind of left them behind. They've grown up, they've moved on to other stuff. And I think that it's really fascinating because YouTube is just constantly like that for everybody. But as a community, we never really seem to move on in a weird way. I will say that top 10s did exist during this period. Like that was when that kind of, obviously they existed before. But like a lot of the smaller creators kind of hopped on that as a trend. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I think it started the whole kind of meta trend of people hopping on different things to try and get clout, which again is not a bad thing, but it does lead to a lot of content feeling very samey. And I think that ultimately, um, that can lead to like kind of a negative experience as a creator. Obviously, I was kind of out of creating Pokemon content at this time. I was still on the internet and absorbing all of this and still creating content. But Pokemon content, like this was the period where I tapped out. And again, I was very young, but I still kind of understood this a lot. So also 2016 and 17, like Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun and Moon, I adore those games, but they are not easily the most replayable. So when your content is kind of designed around that, naturally it falls into, you have to fall back on trying to find other ways to like kind of desperately put out new content. And we saw like a little bit more appreciation for spin-offs during that time period, which is kind of cool. But aside from that, yeah, really, like I think that there was maybe a lot of stuff behind the scenes that I am not aware about, that I've heard other people talk about during this time period, that really kind of set the nail for some people. And I think this is the era where like everything was just so samey. And again, I think all of this history, this big history lesson, and I'm sorry for all of this, is about building up that context. So weirdly enough, like the next kind of era after that was with Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee and Sword and Shield. And I don't want to sound like overdramatic, but Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee genuinely saved content creation for Pokemon. And I'll get on to why that is in a second. And it ushered in well, first of all, so the series at this point, a lot of discourse, like a negative discourse surrounding Game Freak, surrounding the development of the games had started to happen. And I think discussion videos actually kind of mattered way more. And regardless of what your sides on any of this shit is, there was genuine, interesting discourse that was being passed around. And even if it was, beaten into a cloud of vapor, there was still like genuine discourse on how these games were made. Things that people didn't really talk about that much. And even if it was very surface level, even if it was just bring back National Day, or any of that kind of shit, it was still there. And I think that that's a really big stepping stone. And Let's Go and Temtem kind of started that around 2018. Also, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee is like the most accessible fucking game ever. And Pogo, obviously Pokemon Go really kind of brought in this new audience to Let's Go. So the core Pokemon content creation community kind of, there was kind of like a nice mold with Let's Go. And shiny hunting just blew up. It was like that, it finally had its big boom. And then we started to see people like A-Drive blow up, a lot of Twitch content coming across to YouTube. And I think, again, like challenges also finally got the main spotlight. Like, could you beat blank doing blank? Could you beat Pokemon Emerald with a Goldeen? And it's like, regardless of what you think of that content, it was still interesting, right? To see these like trends kind of finally blow up like Nuzlocke did and all of those variants years ago. Unfortunately, I feel like that era going into 2020 with the pandemic and 2021 was very short-lived. Like, we have a bunch of new people making this type of content, but at the same time, it just kind of has this weird cycle of trends that I think is kind of inescapable at this point. And again, I'll get to that when I get to my big grievances part. I think I'll like do something with the timestamps in the description to kind of highlight when this part of the discussion happens. But at the end of the day, it really felt like we were going to go to like this new period of content. And I think it was really awesome. Unfortunately, they just kind of became trends again, which, like Pokemon right now is in such a fascinating position. And I think my biggest issue with Pokemon content creation at this point is how stagnant it is in spite of that. So, we still have people making the same videos that they made 2 years ago. Or in some people's instances, maybe their videos have gotten better. Maybe they've refined them a little bit, but they're making the same type of content that they did back when X and Y was coming out. And I really, really, really would love to see a community that just kind of blossoms in the fact that we are getting, like a remake that nobody really has concrete, like, opinions on. Like, the community is, like, really divided on BDSP. It's super divided on Legends Arceus. Sword and Shield is like in the rearview mirror, but people still talk about it a lot. And I think, again, whilst that controversy might be tiring for some, I also think that the discourse that could come from it is great. And I feel like I am a person that has found their place in that, and I really want to continue like educating in that regard, and also just putting my opinions out there. So, that's kind of where we're at. That's the history lesson done. And I feel like there are a few things from all of these, time periods that I need to break down and to talk about individually. So I think that as a community, we need to generally lighten up. And I know that might sound video. I know that might, what am I saying? Holy shit. I know that might sound stupid considering I just made a video. So that's what I was trying to say, about people that make videos, or like a community that creates videos in some baby game. But I think that we do need to lighten up in general. I think that, it's very easy for me to say, despite having a lot of personal grievances in this community, that again, it's not my place to air out and I don't really want to cause drama. But, despite, I feel like as a whole, and maybe this will happen when conventions open up, when the pandemic kind of, dies down. But I think we all need to like try and be friends again. Like, I know that's definitely hard. And there are definitely some bridges that are absolutely broken. And I would not, on a personal level, I don't think, again, I can't speak for everybody personally, but I think it would be very good if, people could extend olive branches down to smaller creators back, like we did in the X and Y days. I think that as somebody who is, starting to grow, and is that is starting to see like both perspectives, it's interesting, like when you like, not to, I hate this coming off like a flex, but my BDSP video has had its third kind of bump in the algorithm. It's at like 330k views, and seeing the discourse underneath that is so fascinating, and I really want content creators to become a part of that. And I feel like rising up with this new wave is honestly going to be a great thing. But for that, I feel like we need to lighten up. I feel like we need to have less like, like less sections of like, it almost feels like we've wrapped back around, like, back in the day, like really, really early on, we had like forums for different content creators, and those are fine. But when we now just have Discord servers and like very tight communities, which can be a good thing, but ultimately, I think having a wider community, like we would all benefit so much more from that as creators. And it's a real shame that doesn't seem to be the case. But who knows if it's too difficult to go back on that. So yeah, that's the big thing. Also, I do want to touch on drama as like a discussion point, because first of all, I think drama is naturally going to occur. I don't think that you can have a situation or a community where everybody is going to be friends with each other. And I understand that, and I'm not stupid, But one big thing in that, I think we need to separate. We need to fully draw a line in the sand between drama and serious allegations. I think that hyping up drama in like the weirdest way is you see it a lot in wider communities than this. But in the Pokemon community, there tends to be a lot of, either drama that gets blown up really unnecessarily, or very serious stuff, or shitty things that people have done. Again, not to name any specifics, that gets put into the category of drama. Like, to me, drama is just two people arguing on Twitter. Whereas, like, drama is not some horrible allegation. And I do think that this is so important to draw a line in the sand about. And I think that, like, the lines tend to get blurred. It's not a huge issue because I think these things will happen anyway, but it is something that I wanted to touch on. So let's talk about content. Let's talk about leak content and news content. And this is where I am going to get a bit personal, because this is some of the shit that I've experienced. So as somebody who posts a lot of news content, as somebody that discovers a lot of this stuff on their own, as somebody that really tries to kind of report in a way that they can, like, very specifically, You know, like I spend a lot of time wording tweets to make sure that they can't be taken out of context. Um, it really sucks to see uh, content creators take your tweets and either put them as 10 minutes as the background of their video, or uh, just steal them and post them themselves to a larger audience. And again, as I get bigger, this issue kind of tends to happen less and more. Like people can't exactly get away with stealing my stuff as much, but they can just put it as their YouTube video. And like, I get it. Okay. Like, you want to talk about something that I've done or made, and I don't, I respect you for that, and I respect the hustle. But at the same time, my, one tweet shouldn't be paying for your groceries. Like, it sounds weird, but like, again, it's just a tweet. It's just a tweet. But, I would love if people could be more transformative in that sense. I think that reporting on something is not just kind of staring at a Twitter thread and reading it out verbatim. And it really frustrates me. And I know a lot of non-content creators in this community, a lot of quote unquote like fans or people that just watch this content, they agree. And I get messages saying, oh, so and so has put your content in their video, whether it's like a video, and we'll get to PokeTuber React soon, but or just as like leak or news content. And some of this shit like isn't even newsworthy, but it's like, man, you are really profiting off of this thing that I chose to word very specifically so it couldn't be taken out of context, to which it then gets taken out of context by somebody that either steals it or, makes a whole video on. And like, again, I feel like being more transformative is probably the way to go there. Again, I don't have any grievances with people that do that. I just think that it's, kind of a necessary evil that we can tweak a little bit to, or improve. So, yeah, that's my general and also, again, like leak on news. I feel like a lot of people have, said this, but making your own leaks on VP and just reading them out verbatim is not content. Like that's a personal thing. Like I don't like it. And people know that you do it. But I'm not here to talk about what content is necessarily, like a lot of people would use the word lazy. Again, I think that everyone's trying to, chase a bag at some point. And I think that, shitting on people for doing that is not really the way that I want to go. But I do think that is something that, maybe other people see an issue with as quote unquote lazy content. And another thing that kind of falls into that broader category is the PokeTuber Reacts stuff. So remember how I was like, oh, having trends, for content kind of sucks. Excuse me. But at the end of the day, it's not really hurting anyone. Like, you might not be a fan of like these like leak videos that don't really contribute anything to the discussion, or because not everything needs to at the end of the day. Like, tabloids exist for a reason. I think that's fine. But you might not be a fan of that, or the top tens, or like the randomizer, Soul Link, hyper, co-op versus Nuzlocke meta. But that's still content that isn't hurting anyone. When it's PokeTuber Reacts stuff and just React to Andy like content in general, I think we also need to draw a fine line of when that is acceptable. So, trend, like, not only is that like a trend that tires people out, but irrelevant of your personal opinion on it, I think that you can take a lot of people's content. And, I don't think people are doing this with bad intent. Please don't misunderstand me. I want to make this very clear. People aren't, waking up, big content creators aren't waking up in the morning and being like, yeah, I'm going to steal this person's shit. But I do think that they need to think about the impact that has on a smaller creator. So let me talk about like reaction content in general, because I think there is genuinely a place for it. So Twitch streamers tend to do this a lot. You'll find a streamer that will watch some big video that millions of people have watched before. You have fucking Trainwrecks watching like Kitchen Nightmares for 14 hours before he starts Scuffed. Like, it's, it just happens. React content is fine, but when it's maybe a smaller content creator, that's kind of weird, Like, reacting to trailers and reacting to movies or TV shows or things made by big corporations or productions is fine, but when it's like the everyman, when it's like the, somebody that is already trying to fend for themselves, and genuinely creating some niche content that they're really proud of that took hours and hours to make, I feel like reacting to it and boiling that content down to its bare essentials, like kind of not only removes the viewership and the potential audience that that person could have, but it also rips the context right out. Again, since my video has got a lot of views at this point, I've seen numerous people reacting to it. And whilst I do appreciate the intent, and I think that they went into it with good intent, and they were good sports in their videos about it, it also has the inherent effect. They're not doing this intentionally, but it has the inherent effect of robbing a lot of the context from, my video. So what ends up happening is you'll have people in the comments of like these React videos being like, well, that first video was stupid. Like that content was stupid. His points were dumb. And it's, the content creator isn't saying that, but that's the effect that can create. And it's like, like the alternative, like here are the two worlds here, right, that I envision. We either see a world where people just don't do that at all. They don't react to this content and they don't kind of have this, let this opportunity happen where, hardworking kind of content is taken out of context and it does hurt that content creator inherently, even if they intend to or not. Or they have to edit it around being able to react to everything in context. And I don't want to force people to walk on eggshells. I think that's a really shitty ask, even though I do feel kind of used in a sense. Also, can we talk about that, by the way? There's definitely a sense of like cliques in this community that really want something out of someone. And I've seen it, not just happen with me, but with a lot of creators. And this was something that started way, way back when, like graphic design layouts started to become like not really a problem. But it does lead to the feeling of people, again, if this wasn't their intent, that's fine. And I don't think it is most of the time. But I think that a lot of the creatives in this community tend to feel used. And I've seen that sentiment not necessarily personally. I mean, I have, but it's not really a big deal. But I have seen it echoed by a lot of other people throughout the years. And I still think that it's kind of pertinent to the point where I want to bring it up. God, where am I? This video is like 30 minutes already. So yeah, there's that. Let's talk about the word PokeTuber as well, because I've seen a lot of discourse on this, and it's really fascinating, because personally, I hate the word. I think that it is, like, I wouldn't class myself as a PokeTuber, because if we really want to look at when that word was first, like, used commonly, I think that it was, and I've talked about this with Pokemon content creators before, and it's why I like to refer to people as the content creator community, because first of all, PokeTuber kind of like exiles all of the Twitch content creation, I think, which, even if they upload on YouTube, that is still like, a monument, as I said, around the time like Let's Go came out and streaming started to blow up for Pokemon. I got my squeaky ass chair, dude. Can you hear this shit? So, what was I saying? I lost my train of thought. Fuck. But yeah, no, like, first of all, I think that just leaves out like Twitch content creators. Again, that's nobody's intent, but I feel like it does happen. But also, it's just like a really dated term. Like, if you look at not necessarily when that term was first used, but when it was first kind of coined and used regularly, it was around the time of X and Y, of that collaborative meta. And people always when everybody was collaborating with each other, it felt right to call, that like the PokeTuber community. Because again, like everybody was working with each other. Now that is less of, the thing where everybody has like separate communities, I feel like the term PokeTuber is just really outdated because it refers to a group of people that collaborated with each other in like 2013. And, times change. And I think that words change and meanings change. And again, it's not really a huge deal. I just think that it's a bit pointless. And as well, the word PokeTuber does have a negative connotation because of things that have happened in the past. And I think that it would just be better to, call people Pokemon YouTubers or content creators that make Pokemon. I mean, it's not as snappy, but like, what are you going to do? Like, it's not going to ruin your branding if you remove the word PokeTuber from your lexicon. So let's see. I've talked about that. I've talked about this. Getting back onto kind of that era and a lot of the content creators from that era, myself being one, I feel like there was a real fear to adapt, to change. And I think that creating the same, I'm going to say this very bluntly, creating the same content that you made like 7 years ago isn't going to work. And that's unfortunate. And it sucks. And I wish it wasn't the case. I wish that we could just create whatever content we wanted and for people to watch. But ultimately, it's just not realistic. Like, people move on, and you're going to get diminishing returns on those new audiences. And there are people that are going to stick by you, and those people are super loyal. And I think in 7 years' time, I would die to have people that have stuck with me for that long, even though I already do. I still have some OGs in there, but like, I think that we need to, like, this is again part of a general discussion, and really like a lot of old time content creators can speak on this maybe better than I can. But it feels like, as I said back then, there wasn't like a fatigue to producing this shit. Whereas now, with a lot of those older content creators and the opinions that I've seen kind of echoed and expressed by them, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but I feel like there's like a refusal to adapt, but also like, it's really hard to, God, I like lost my train of thought again. I'm so sorry. But I think that producing the same content and expecting results is just, it sucks. And it sucks for anyone. And I really wish that fatigue, because that wasn't really the case when everything felt so new in that kind of golden age. When PokeTubers first started to come about and everyone was collaborating with each other. And again, I feel like if we were more open as a community and we did have that kind of space again, because again, this community is technically bigger than ever if you add everybody up, compared to 2013. But like, I don't know, like it feels smaller than ever because everybody's so, within themselves. And I think it would be really cool because I have a lot of people that I talk to on Twitter, for example, like Twitter mutuals, that have been in this community for a long time and create vastly different content to me. But it would be cool to see them come outside of their comfort zone and maybe work on a collaboration with me, on something like that. Or I could collaborate with them. Like, I really see, not to say that I'm going to be the person to do this, but I would love to bring kind of that old school era and, the newer creators into the same bubble so we can have this huge, not like utopia, but, it would just be rad. And I don't really see any downsides from it. And I think this does come at the cost of, letting your walls down a bit and not creating the same thing that you've made time and time again. And I think experimenting would just help with everyone. Again, I think the biggest thing to happen in this community, or maybe the best thing, was, all of those controversial Sword and Shield videos. Or Let's Go, because, like, I'm naturally a very positive person on the series, but it does bring about discourse that wasn't really, discussed 7 or so years ago. Nobody really complained about X and Y when those games came out, but now there's like such a discussion on that. And why is that? Like, that's so interesting to me. And I would really love to see more of that. So yeah, I feel like I've touched on everything. There are just like a few things that I would like to mention. First of all, I want content creators to like learn how to monetize better. As somebody that doesn't make that much money to begin with, I realize that I'm not in any position to say this, but I think that realizing the value of Patreon and a small audience is really huge, and that's some advice that I would like to, put onto some people. I think that I see Patrons, again, not to name any names, and you guys won't guess this, because I'm not going to go into specifics, but there are some Patrons that are really like predatory and don't give people nearly enough content for nearly enough value. Again, maybe that's just a personal take from what I've seen, but it does come across kind of gross. And again, you will not guess who I'm talking about. So good luck with that one. Also, I hope during this video, nobody tries to psychoanalyze who I'm, referring to or talking about, unless I explicitly mention them. Because again, that's just fucking weird. Again, lighten up. I'm just talking about community in general here. Yeah, what else? There was, TCG content. I don't need to speak on this because Frosted Caribou, she made, I think it was a couple of months ago now, and this is slowly starting to fade away. But the TCG community, yikes, like, her video is massive and structured, and it's way better than I could ever give credit for. But she made a video on TCG content creation, Pokemon, card game shit, And I think that it is, really unfortunate the way that it has gone. And I think that, I couldn't do her video justice, but I think that that community for a while has been pretty problematic and very predatory. And I think that, upselling cards is really shitty. I think that promoting certain behaviors to your audience is really shitty. I think that, especially when a lot of that audience, we do inevitably produce for kids at some point. And whilst I would prefer to not have anyone under the age of 18 watch my videos, it's just the reality of it, like we can't stop that. I also think pandering to kids is a weird thing that I see in this community a lot, and I'm not really a fan of it. But I feel like it is inevitable if people really want to get like the big bucks, which is unfortunate for a variety of reasons. But I don't need to explain why marketing solely to kids is not a good thing, right? Especially when you're like selling a product in a lot of instances. And this is coming from someone that has never sold a product in his life, so I don't know what I'm talking about. Holy shit, I just went fucking rap god for like 40 minutes. Thank you for listening. Again, this has been a total mess. And if you're a Pokemon content creator, please DM me on Twitter. Respond to me in the comments. I don't really want this video to blow up because really this is only aimed at content creators. I don't think, I'm not going to give this like a clickbaity title. I'm just going to tweet this out and share it, ask people to share it with other content creators. But, I really want to start some discourse on this because I think it's really, really fascinating. So peace out, guys. Again, if you want actual real content, please look at my main channel. Also, I think that like there's one thing that I want to say about the PokeTuber Reacts content. Like as somebody that has been like personally affected by it, again, it hasn't like deeply affected me, but like it's an example of where you aren't necessarily being shitty, and I don't think you're a shitty person, but that type of content breeds this like this weird kind of reaction that is kind of out of your control. And I think that's like the biggest takeaway is like a lot of this stuff is really easy to fix, I feel. Unless it's like interpersonal stuff between different content creators, I can't fuck with that. But I do, like that's on your own terms. But I do think that this is something that we can all kind of get behind. I don't feel like I've mentioned anything particularly outlandish. And it would be awesome to see content creators that maybe I'm not interested in really kind of step it up. And I don't think they need to like fundamentally overhaul their content or even necessarily try new things. I think they just need to be open to the idea and also to not screwing over smaller content creators that don't necessarily get a spotlight. I would much rather prefer that people work with smaller content creators instead of watching their videos, if that makes sense. So yeah, thank you for all of this. And thank you for your time. And yeah, I'll see you guys later. Peace out.